Likewise,
Yeah,
finally.
sorry about
No,
we.
as long as it didn't lose anybody. I know some people were like 8 minutes in, and we had an event last night, and there's some technical problems off the top, and we lost a few people. And
Ah,
it's always a shame if you know um,
Mm.
that happens just because of some mistakes. That's really nobody's fault.
awesome. Well, I'm glad we're on agreement there. So first off, I would like to acknowledge that I live and work on the unceded territory of the Okanagan Salish Nation. And hello and welcome to the BC Tour, everybody. My name is Travis Ashley, and I'll be your host for this evening. I am the CEO of the Kelowna-Lake Country EDA, and we have a bunch of EDA members with us across the board. We have Nipper, we're also North Island, Powell River, doing this with us, Sandwich Gulf Islands, and Kelowna-Lake Country, 3 of 5 that actually started this. And it'd be really nice to recognize the significant collaboration that's gone into this project. So I thank everybody for doing this. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping issues and rules here. To maximize your viewing pleasure, you're going to want to switch to speaker view so that you only see the person who is speaking. That way Andrew will have our full attention. And to switch to speaker view, move your mouse to the top right-hand corner of the Zoom screen, and you can toggle between speaker view and gallery view, whichever you choose. The chat's currently disabled for security reasons. Not only is the chat disabled, but we will be removing anyone who is disruptive. So far in our series, we haven't had any issues with people trying to disrupt our events, for which we're all grateful. We're doing this series a little differently than the other events with leadership contestants. The leadership contest is now truly on and in its last weeks. And so we thought we'd give the contestants a chance to really showcase themselves. So while we have prepared questions, we're going to give Andrew 10 to 15 minutes to tell us about who he is as a leader and how his life experience informs us with his leadership style. And also, we should let you know that all these events will be recorded and will be available on YouTube and the EDA's Facebook pages. Andrew, first of all, welcome and thanks for joining us tonight again.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Excellent. Just a question before we get going. We've had a few times when an event has gone over the hour. So if we get a whole lot of questions, we will see around 8 o'clock. If you want to stick around, if it's coming up to a wrap, we'll let you know.
Okay. I've actually blocked off 2 hours for this. So.
Well, excellent. Look at that. Fantastic. We'll play it by ear. Okay, the floor is yours for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Tell us why you're the person we should choose as our next leader, and we'll let you know to wind it down in about 12 minutes.
Okay, thanks, well, thank you. Basically, as a leader, what makes me a good leader is the fact that I do lead. I lead by example. And I've done that throughout my life, and I've done that throughout being a Green Party candidate. I've been a candidate many times for the Green Party, each time building on the success that I've had previously, including earlier this year. I've already ran in a by-election earlier this year in a part of Ottawa called Orleans, which is on the east end of Ottawa. And in that by-election, we over doubled the Green Party of Ontario vote from the previous election, and it was the best that the Green Party of Ontario has ever done in that riding ever. So I know what this intent of this meeting is supposed to be, and it's to get to know me. So I'm just going to be talking about myself. If you feel like you have any questions, I know it's coming up, so just please write it down. I'm happy to take all of them. So I grew up north of Toronto. It's a small town called Owen Sound, and that's actually where I am right now. And one of the reasons why I'm here, even though I live in Ottawa, is because when the pandemic happened, my wife and I shut our condo down, and we came to Ottawa to make sure that my mother was taken care of. So that was very important to us. We've been here since that time. She's only recently gone back to work in the last couple of weeks, and with the leadership contest coming up so soon, it just doesn't make much sense to pack up and leave. And plus I have this really nice backdrop that I've set up here. So it would be much nicer than the blue wall that you would see at my condo in Ottawa. I've been a candidate, as I said, 4 times for the Green Party. I've also been the Attorney General critic for the Green Party of Ontario since 2015. And I'm running in this leadership race because I want the Green Party to get elected. I know what it's like to sit on the sidelines, and so many Greens can relate to this. Knowing that you're the best candidate in the race, knowing that you have the best ideas, and still coming in fourth place. I know that gains have been made in British Columbia, particularly in Vancouver Island, but for the rest of Canada, that's more common, a fourth place finish. And I know from listening to so many people what the Green Party can do to win. And so that's how I built my vision for the party, is how can we actually win? And I like to say that a lot of the other contestants in this leadership contest are talking about what they can do for the Green Party. I'm talking about what the Green Party can do for Canada. That's my goal, is to get us elected, because I know we have the great policies and we have the best ideas, but they're not going to mean anything unless we do get elected. And we do have to get elected under first past the post. So that's something that I've been encouraging many people, because there's still a group of Green Party members that are content to just be the voice of reason. And unfortunately, the other parties have proven that that's not going to work. We have to get elected under first past the post to implement our good ideas, even proportional representation. The other parties aren't going to do it. The Liberal Party proved they weren't going to do it. They broke their promise. The NDP has had opportunities, and currently in British Columbia right now and in Alberta, and they haven't brought that in. So we're the only party that's going to be able to bring that in to make sure that we have a fair electoral system. And we're going to do it because that's the right thing to do. And that's what we as Greens do. We do the right thing. And I think I can best sum up, and you may have heard this before, so if you're hearing a story that I've already told once before, please indulge me. But I think this story probably tells what my leadership style is like better than anything else I can say. So I know that there's been other candidates in this race that have a lot of more high profile name, because they've run for different parties. We have two contestants in this contest who have both run to be the leader of a Liberal Party in the not too distant past. And I could have ran for a different party. I really, really want to get elected. I really do, because I want to help people. And I know that the best way that I can help the most people as possible is to pass legislation, truly meaningful legislation. And I've been approached by other parties to run for them. I can tell you some funny stories, including, by the way, Jack Layton personally suggested that I run for the NDP, right to my face. And I knew that the Green Party was the party that resonated most with my values. So I made the choice not to run for a different party. I made the choice to run for the Green Party, even though when I did here in Ontario, again, very low in the polls. But it meant more to me to sacrifice personal gain to help build the party that I believed in. So when some people say that we need to elect someone or to as leader who has a lot more experience, I say, look at the experience. My experience is with the Green Party. My experience is helping build it. I've passed policies for the Green Party of Ontario that I know are going to last for a long time, and I know they're going to make the party better. I know that I've brought people to the party. I've had at least one, maybe two people say to me that they're running as candidates because I inspired them to run for the Green Party. I go to class talks and I talk to grade 10 civics classes all over Ottawa. And I've had parents say to me, I'm voting for you because my children told me so. And I've had just one so far, student who's now 18 say that they joined the Green Party to vote for me in this leadership contest. And they wanted to help out in this leadership contest because I came to their class and talked to them. So that's my leadership style. It's leading by example, and it's sacrifice. My life for the Green Party, my life has been the Green Party the last 5 or 6 years. There might be some out there, maybe there's some listening on this call that have done more for the Green Party over the last 6 years that weren't a paid employee. But I don't know of too many others that have done that. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm also someone that truly builds. I'm not someone that says on camera that they're a builder and then behind the scenes tears things apart. I truly want to bring people together. I know that there's issues going on with federal council right now, for example. Some of you may know that. Fortunately, I live in the riding where the head office of the Green Party is. And I was able to go there many times and talk to staff, and I've made friends with many staff members. My intent to go there was to strengthen the EDAs across Canada, which is another part of my platform. This is how I know we're going to win, because the media is not paying attention to us. So we're going to get votes when we make strong connections in the community, when we elect our candidates, nominate our candidates early so they can start building up name recognitions, when they do things like class talks. This is how we're going to build up the party, and this is how we're going to get more seats. But when I was in the head office and talking to them, I would say that, look, we in the riding associations, we need more help. We need more training on how to use GVote. We need more training on how to mobilize volunteers, how to fundraise. These are things that the other major parties do very well. They're really good at running campaigns, and we need to get better at it. And I was very supportive of trying to get more help for the EDAs on how to build up and how to run a stronger campaign. So that's something that I bring to the party as well.
Yeah, well,
Someone who's very, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to thank you for both your optimism and your passion and how long you've been involved and moved this party that we all call home for a lot of us as a family and a team unit. And I'm glad we parallel many of those views.
Well, the
And
one thing I was just going to wrap up on is
yeah,
I didn't write, I'm trying not to go off script here, because I think that that's what you really want.
yeah, we want
And
to go off
to
script.
me,
We want to
what's that?
know. We want to know about you. We
Yeah,
want to know, what makes you tick. What's your favorite color? What kind of breakfast do you eat in the morning? So, just let us know some things.
sure. Well, that's part of what I'm trying to project here, is that I'm a regular human. I'm genuine. One of the things that really gets to me is Justin Trudeau. He's so smooth and so polished, and he has his timing of his pauses down perfectly. And there are times when I almost don't, and you can see sometimes I may struggle a little bit. So sometimes I just don't force myself to be too polished, because I want people to see who I really am. This is who I really am. I don't have that fake smile. I don't have those pauses down. Sometimes I pause genuine, and I can do it a little bit, but not the same way. Being genuine is very important to me, because I want to be the candidate that I would vote for. And so to me, that's requires being genuine. And it's also, again, welcoming. Like, part of my platform strategy is actually not to be focused too much on the leader. I think that that's something that's hurt the Green Party in the past. Now, we were smart to focus on Saanich Gulf Islands to get Elizabeth May elected, as we were here in Ontario to focus on the riding of Guelph, which you may not know, but it's where Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party of Ontario, won. And it made sense to do that, because once you're elected, the leader is, they get to be in the leaders' debates, and that's a lot more exposure for the party. But I think that the Green Party hasn't done a good job of branching out, and they focus too much on certain areas that they think were winnable. And for me, that's not a way to grow a party. if we want to grow in places like Ontario and Quebec and the prairies, we have to do a better job of helping out those EDAs and showing them that they matter. So my approach would be being the lead voice amongst so many amazing other voices. Highlight as many candidates as I possibly can to show Canadians this is who you're voting for. It's not the one person. It's an amazing group of people. That's my leadership style. As for me as a person, here, okay, I can talk about myself for quite a long time. First off,
I'll just step in and just say we're at 12 minutes, okay? And I'll
oh,
let you
okay.
keep going.
We got a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, well, I can wrap up real quick about myself. I love baseball. The Toronto Blue Jays are one of my favorite teams right there. I love hockey as well. I have followed the Canucks. I don't know how many of you are Canucks fans, but I do follow all of the Canadian teams. Yeah, Travis, excellent. And was very, very sad when they didn't win the cup. Was it 5 years ago now or 6 years ago?
Boston, or that was a while back, actually.
Boston? No.
Right. Yeah. No, that
Yeah.
was the first time I remember that they did win. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I was I worked in television for a number of years. So when I first left my hometown, I just went to film school and I worked in TV for a number of years, and including on elections. I worked for a national news team on elections, so I know what they're looking for from the other side of the perspective. So that's something else that I bring. I'm married. I have many I do have many aunts and uncles, but I have many nieces and nephews. I'd have to say that I'm about as good of an uncle as they could possibly get. I like the water. I like being out on nature, but in particular in the water. I grew up on Georgian Bay, which is part of Lake Huron. In fact, on a clear day, I can see it, and from where I am right now. And so being out on the water is something that's very, very important to me. I just really feel at home there. And comedy, I'm a big fan of comedy. I'm a very kind person. I like to treat others the way I would want to be treated.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving us the blip about yourself, and really great dialogue. It was good to see where your priorities are and what you see and what you want to see going forward for the party. Thank you so much for that, Andrew.
Thank you.
And also, thanks for putting yourself forward. At this point, we're going to open up the chat for questions from the attendees. We do have some questions prepared. So don't worry, we're not going to run out of questions or things to talk about, but we'd like to give our attendees a chance to ask questions directly. We have a good amount of people on this call, so please only post one question in the chat. I won't hold you to one question, but just so it doesn't get too cluttered. If you're very passionate about 2 or 3, go right ahead. Right before we get any questions, I'll start you off with impromptu on what has surprised you most in this leadership contest, either in a good way or a bad way, Andrew?
I guess I can answer both, in good way or bad way. I'll start with the bad so I get it out of the way. One of the things that's surprised me most is that it seems that there's a bit of hypocrisy in the Green Party, in a sense that we talk about having democracy as being very important to us. And we pride ourselves in being a grassroots party. But I've already seen people talk about voting strategically in this election, even though it's a ranked ballot, that we're talking about, well, we have to get behind one person and make sure that person wins. One of the other things that really seems to be odd is that someone can publicly endorse one candidate and then expect to be like a moderator. And I don't think that's fair. I think that's not right. In fact, right or wrong, and Elizabeth is a good friend of mine. I've been in her home many times. But when she endorsed one candidate, I felt that she was no longer impartial. And so she actually moderated the first debate that I could have been a part of on electoral reform, which is a very important thing for me. Electoral reform is a huge passion of mine. In fact, I even have a particular system that I endorse. And it didn't seem right that she would be a moderator. I thought that that was being impartial. So I raised my concerns to the organizers, to the other candidates, and none of it changed. And so I actually sat out that debate because it was not right. And I felt that I was the only person. And maybe, please, that situation's coming again, actually, in a debate that's upcoming. And maybe I'm overreacting, but to me, it's you have to take a stand. As good as these people are, that's my integrity is not worth. My integrity is more important than being part of a debate and getting a bit more exposure. So again, that tells you a bit more about my leadership style as well, that I was willing to do that. So that's something that's kind of been a bit bothersome that I've noticed in this debate, because to me, if democracy is very important with the Green Party and it's very important to me, it's not worth compromising. One of the things that is really pleasant that I've learned is that my vision is resonating with people. And it started off slow, but it's really starting to pick up. In fact, there was, if you look on YouTube for North Island Powell, which is a riding, I think that's pretty close to you guys. Well, let me just backtrack a bit. I was used to seeing that these EDAs who record sessions like this posted, and me having a few less views than some of the other candidates. But the most recent one that we've all been a part of separately was North Island Powell, and I have the most views now out of all the other candidates. So that's really great. I'm convinced that of having all sorts of great conversations, if I could just talk to every single Green Party member, I would win this election. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that, but I know that if they can just hear what I have to say and I can relate to them, that I would win this. So having those pleasant conversations has been the best part of this leadership contest so far.
Great. That's really good to hear, Andrew. And once again, the optimism is awesome. I love seeing that. It gets me excited, and I think we all want to be excited, especially during this leadership contest. And I'm going to turn it over to Harold if you have a question from the chat, if you don't mind asking.
Yes, we do have a question here from Ben. It says, your campaign site talks about the importance of supporting EDAs more evenly across the country, including with financial resources.
Yeah.
But today, 90% of donations are distributed to the riding they were made from. How do you plan to raise the large sums of money that you'd need to implement this national redistribution?
So I'm not sure about that 90% number. I think
I'm not
it's
either, but
I just sourced it. I'll pull it up for you and link it in the chat.
okay. I appreciate that, because again, I know staff, I know it pretty well. And actually, it's only been recently that they actually, that I'm aware of, started to allow contributions to go to the local EDA, because I've been on EDAs and I don't know, we don't get that. When I was the president of EDA, and that was just 2 years ago, we were not getting 90% of the funding of the donations, not even close. I think it's less than 10%, to be honest. And again, I've been a president of an EDA for 2 years, and I served on another EDA at the same time. So maybe things are different out in British Columbia, and if that is, good for you guys. But we're not getting that. We're definitely not getting that. But it's more than
just included in the chat the policy.
Well, what's policy and what's happens might be two different things.
I've had that similar experience when it comes to the direct donations as well. And it's one of those things where you can donate to the party or directly to your EDA. And it's sometimes an easy thing to miss, even though it's on the same page and all. But yeah, it'd be good to see more directness.
So here's something that I'm going to step away from being a leadership contestant for a minute, if that's okay, and talk to you from someone who has been the president of an EDA. And I know that it's speaking to a British Columbia EDA is often different than speaking to an EDA across the rest of Canada, because you do get a lot more resources, and rightfully deserving. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it is a different beast in an EDA where, you know, sometimes it's just one or two people, if any, that keeps an EDA alive. So one of the things that has just recently started, as Travis pointed out, is that you can now donate directly to your local riding association. They take a percentage. I think that's maybe where this 10% has come from, because that 9% is, maybe they're just talking about direct contributions that are made specifically to the riding association. Maybe that's what this means.
Yes.
But because that would make sense. But so many more people just donate straight to the party. So if you are making a monthly donation, I'm sure probably all of you are, please ask the party to change that towards being directed to your local EDA. And one of the things that we did to recruit new members and funding is, and I guess this actually does play into answering the question. We would get together 4 times a year. We would aim for that, but we would never do it. But we'd aim for it 4 times a year. And we would have people over. We'd pick someone's house. And this is tough to do in COVID times, but normal times we'd have people over. We would have dinner, and then we would distribute members. We would distribute up our members list to the people who showed up, and we would make phone calls to the lapsed and expired members and see if they would like to renew their membership, and also get it to be directed towards the local EDA. And we would also call up federal members and see if they would like to sign up for a provincial membership, because usually there's more people that have federal memberships than provincial memberships. And so that was a way to get more funding, and it was a way to make sure that we continually keep those members involved. We would also get together once a month, not for a meeting, just for what we call green drinks. And it was just a friendly get together at a restaurant, just to keep that community going. Well, more specifically, that's just what I did on a local EDA myself. What I would do as a leader is, again, focus attention on the EDAs, but also work with federal council to make sure that the EDAs do have the resources. Now, other candidates are saying that we need to strengthen our EDAs, I'm saying it too, but I at least know that this is the responsibility of federal council. But they need to have that push. They need to be sure that they're doing that they are reaching out to their regions and reaching out to the EDAs in the regions and making sure that they do have the resources. And as I said earlier, I went to the head office and I said, look, EDAs need all this. And it wasn't until recently that I was speaking with someone, a high profile person in the office, and they said, we've tried to reach out to the EDAs and they just aren't receptive. And from someone who was on the EDAs, that was hard to swallow, because I never saw that. But I always like to see what the other side is seeing. And so what I see from that is that there's this disconnect, that both sides are wanting something and both sides feel that they're offering or opening their arms to it, but it's not happening. So that needs to improve. And that means working with federal council, that we can reach out and have events where we can, and again, it's more about fundraising. It's more than just fundraising. It's about learning how to use the GVOTE, learning how to mobilize volunteers, learning how to outreach into the community, having these sessions and encouraging the EDAs to do that. This is how we're going to get a lot more seats.
Thank you for being so EDA specific there and talking to us all Greens, and it's very important to me, and I'm sure everyone else here that's listening to your strategy from within as well. And thank you for that, Andrew. I'm going to turn it over to Susan, who's going to ask us a question from our shortlist. Susan?
Thanks, Travis. And thank you, Andrew, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
As leader, how will you change the Green Party's approach to young people so that they do not only feel safe, but feel heard and taken seriously as an equal voice? And part of this comes from the young Greens who are on federal council, sometimes not feeling as equal members, but it's also younger people who are in our EDAs.
I mean, I lead by example, and I have worked with youth on the EDAs that I've been involved in and supported them and encouraged them. I mean, it would be great if we had my deputy director on here. He's 19. He might be 20 now, or my deputy campaign manager. And he is probably better to answer this question for you than I would, because he can actually say with credibility of how I create a welcoming space for people of all ages, and how I'm someone who is very receptive of voices. Someone that really very in tune to the people who are around me, and make them sure that, if they're nice people, make sure that they're welcomed and heard. I think that my message is actually the best for youth in the Green Party, young Greens, because I'm also not only talking about having a stronger environment. I want to do what's good for the environment. We think about 7 generations ahead, and we think about that, the environment, but I'm also thinking about that for the economy as well. So I don't want future generations to be stuck with an inhabitable environment, but also an unsustainable debt. So that shows that I've also been on school boards, not school boards like as in elected school boards, but when I was getting my undergrad at Ryerson University, I was on the board of directors for the student union, and I sat on the Senate, the Ryerson Senate, as a student senator. And I know that, I've saw from example from those bodies, not so much the student union because they're all young people as well, but the Senate, of how when you listen to voices of all ages, good things happen. And we were able to accomplish something when I was a student there. We actually got, we were the only university left in Ontario that didn't have a fall reading break. And it's never happened. They kept getting turned down for years. But I was able to help work with the faculty there to actually get it passed. So, Ryerson students from this point on have a fall reading break, and they have me to thank for that. And that's from being welcoming and being inclusive. And so that's the example that I set. And hopefully, that's the example that would be followed on federal council.
Great, thanks very much.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to now send it over to Ben, if you don't mind asking us a question from the chat, Ben.
Yeah, I wrote this one, but I think it's an okay one. Your website talks about the need to balance our budget and live within our means. Would you prefer to reduce the level of services we provide or increase the level of taxation if you had to choose one to prefer?
The latter.
Increase the level of taxation?
Yes. Okay. So when I talk about fiscal responsibility, I think some people just made an assumption right off the bat, an incorrect one, that it was more in line with neoliberal policies, which is not the case. When I talk about fiscal responsibility, I talk about just that, being fiscally responsible. And that often requires a fair tax bracket or fair tax rate. So when you think about how times were in like the 50s and 60s and 70s here in Canada, we had a more fair tax rate. And this talk of the 1% didn't really exist because the 1% really didn't exist. The wealth was spread out amongst more people. And it was in the 80s when they started to shift that towards tax cuts. And that's continued, these neoliberal policies. And that's what's created such a wealth discrepancy here in Canada and across the world for that matter, and particularly in the United States too. So I'm talking about having smart policies. And this is going back to the example of 50s and 60s and 70s. I've always said, and someone actually corrected me, it's actually worse than what I was saying. The average household per household is making about the same amount of money as it did back in the 60s and 70s. The big difference is now there's 2 income earners on average, whereas back then there was 1 income earner. So we're working twice as hard for as much. And then when I did this about a week or so ago, someone corrected me saying, you know what, I did some study on this. It's actually worse than that now. It's almost like you need 3 income earners or 2.5 to generate what a typical household would have earned back a few decades ago. So that's, to me, that's what I'm talking about. And it's also not just talk, it's also branding ourselves as being a fiscally responsible party. And I think that this is definitely our ticket to win. Some of the candidates see these two things as being opposite. I don't. I see them as being connected together. Poll after poll, even recently, you see people saying about 30% of Canadians think that the environment is one of their top choices that they wish that the government would focus on. And the same 30% thinks that it's also the economy. And so to me, that's a large group of voters that we can get into the party to help us get elected so we can actually pass policies that do help the environment. But it's about getting that win-win messaging out there. So for example, having a guaranteed livable income, which by the way, I don't know if anyone saw this. I actually hosted an interview with someone last night on a guaranteed livable income. He's an expert on the subject, and we just posted it to YouTube now. I can actually put the link in the chat before we go. If you've ever had any questions about a guaranteed livable income, we hopefully answered it last night for you. So rather than just kind of say what I think a guaranteed income should look like, I did the Green Party thing and asked an expert and got some great responses. So please don't leave without me putting in this link. I don't want to disrupt the flow of the conversation, but I will definitely put it in the link. But one of the things we talked about was, can it be fiscally responsible? And the answer is yes, because it saves on healthcare costs, because people are eating better, they're able to afford the medicine that they need, they don't skimp out on it, they can consolidate many existing programs so it can be more financially beneficial in that sense. A program like affordable housing, it's often cheaper for a municipality to pay for a bed in affordable housing than it is to pay for a bed in a hospital or a jail, which can often be the alternative for someone who needs housing. A national pharmacare plan is a policy that the Green Party's had for quite some time, and that would save money because it wouldn't allow the large pharmaceutical companies to get provinces to bid against each other to drive up prices. So it's a matter of taking our existing policies that are socially progressive and really good policies and showing how these are also fiscally responsible. And that's our ticket to winning. I know it is. And if we stick with that message, we're going to get so many voters.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Andrew.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, you're saying fair taxation and a stronger social safety net. Look at that.
Yeah, well, this is how things have been. It's just like starting in the 80s, we got this started these policies of these tax cuts. And I'll give you a quick economic lesson. It's called the invisible hand theory. I don't know if any of us heard of that, but what it means is that you give enough tax cuts. This is the theory. I'm not saying I endorse it. I'm just explaining. You give enough tax cuts to the wealthy individuals and the wealthy corporations, and they have this influx of money. And because they have this influx of money, they're going to put it out into the economy because they need services done. They need to hire people to help them do work. They need to hire people to help them take care of their homes. They need to hire people to work. So by doing that, the wealthy individuals and corporations will lift up all these other people out of poverty like an invisible hand. But I don't know the name of the economist, but they once said, well, the invisible hand is invisible because it doesn't exist. Essentially, when you give these large corporations individual tax cuts, they save it, they hold on to it. And when you give when you give proper tax rates to individuals lower down on the income level, they inject that into the economy because they actually do need to buy food and clothes and books for their children and, you know, medicine for their parents. They actually do have to spend money. So it's this old term Fordism, which doesn't really exist anymore, but Henry Ford used to pay his employees enough money that they could go out and buy the goods that they were producing. And we've gotten away from that.
Okay, thank you for touching on that. I also I got a question from Jim Bell privately, and I thought I'd ask you on this. You've already touched on PR, but for electoral reform, what's your strategy to get proportional representation? You've touched on it, but I'd like to hear more about it. And I remember you saying personally, there's a type of PR that you would endorse. Let's hear about that.
I just put it in the chat. So when the Liberal government promised electoral reform, they set up that commission that Elizabeth May was on, which traveled across the country, and they were taking submissions on different type of strategies. So I worked on this policy with 2 other Green members, and what it's essentially a mixed member system. But instead of, when you have a mixed member system, you elect your member of parliament, and then you have these set-off seats, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, so I apologize if I'm talking something you already know. But you have the set-off seats inside the same legislature, and overall it's proportional. This system is actually not having the set-off seats in the House of Commons. It's actually using the Senate as the set-off seats. This deals with electoral reform and Senate reform. And why I really like this idea for a couple of reasons. One, it's proportional, and it fits in with all of the, we looked into it. The Green Party has a set of guidelines that they would, of certain criteria that have to be met for them to endorse a certain type of electoral reform policy. And this fits into all of that. But what I truly like about it is that it not only deals with electoral reform, but it deals with Senate reform as well. So there's actually many things I really like about it. That's one. And why I think that that's important is because we Greens really care about Senate reform. And we should, because it's the right thing to do. And I think it's actually should be the top priority of Canadians, because even more so than the environment. The reason why is because if we had proportional representation now, we would have fairer governments, we would be passing fairer laws, and we would probably have better legislation about the environment already had we had a better electoral system. And so I think as long as we have this bad electoral system in place, we're still not going to get good policies on the environment. You know, we got the Liberals who said they were going to meet the Paris Accord targets, but then buy a pipeline. So a lot of Canadians, though, don't really care about electoral reform. I mean, you in BC, you've had 3 referendums on it, and you know the results better than any Canadian. But Senate reform catches on. People want Senate reform. And this deals with that as well. So this is why I think it's going to catch on, because it touches on something, it does something that we know is the right thing to do, but it also catches the eyes of the average Canadians who might not look at electoral reform. The other thing that it does is it also can keep the exact same ballot and can also keep electing one individual. We looked at all of the all the critiques that most people made about not having electoral reform, and we answered them in this proposal. So people can continue to use the same ballot. People can continue to use or vote for one member of parliament who will represent them. And it addresses Senate reform. And not only that, people are also concerned that it would lead to unstable governments. Well, this doesn't touch the House of Commons. And that's where I'm blanking on the name of it. Confidence votes. That's where confidence votes happen. So it can ensure some more stability within our parliament as well, while still giving us proportional representation. So something could pass through, let's say, a conservative majority House, but it would have to go through a Green majority Senate, or a Senate mixed with Greens and NDP and Liberals for it to pass.
Okay, Andrew, I'm just not quite understanding there. How do you see bringing in Senate reform?
Well, that's a good point, and I'm glad you focused on that.
Okay.
Because to do this policy perfectly, to do this in the best version of it, it would require some constitutional amendments. Not much. In fact, probably the only constitutional amendment, well, I'd have to go through it again. It's been a while. But one of the big ones is just removing the clause that a senator can sit for 75 years once appointed. There's really no other
to age 75.
Age 75, yeah.
Yeah.
There's really no other, from what I remember, there's really not much else in the Constitution that would need to be amended, because a lot of the appointments and a lot of the rules around appointing senators is constitutional convention, not necessarily in the Constitution. There is a version that we put in place, though. It's not as strong, but there's a version that we put in place that could be utilized without any constitutional amendments. But the most ideal version would require constitutional amendments. Now, opening up the Constitution, we admit, is a very tricky thing to do, as anyone who remembers Meech Lake and Charlottetown can testify. But what was big in those two accords was Senate reform, that they wanted it. So I think that there would be an appetite, especially if a party were to run on a policy like this and get elected on it. I think that there would be an appetite with the provinces that you could get the amendments to the Constitution needed. And there's many provinces, British Columbia included, especially the Prairie provinces, that would really support electoral reform, or Senate reform. So I think that this policy could definitely get through. But just in the safe side, we did create a version that could be done without any constitutional amendments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And one thing I should point out is, please take a look at this. I've had people come up to me and say, I don't know about it. It doesn't seem like it would work. And so far, every single person, and from what if my memory is correct, every single person that has said that has come back to me and said, this is amazing, once they start to read it. And they start to really look into it and they say, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. I like this a lot. And that's a great feeling, actually. I really enjoy that happens when someone comes up to me and says, yeah, it's no good. And then come back to me and say, yeah, no, I really like it.
Seems like it's half the battle is just getting people to look at our policies and see how fun and exciting they really are.
Yes.
I'm going to throw it over to you, or Howard, if you got something for us. Sorry, Harold. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Travis. Question came up here. What do you think federal legislature should do about the opioid crisis?
There's a system that they've had in Portugal. I believe it's Portugal, since the 90s, where they didn't legalize drugs, but they did decriminalize all of the drugs. And it's been proven to be very effective there. So effective that they've gone from having around 400 deaths a year in Portugal, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is something about similar to what BC experiences on a yearly basis. They went from having in the 90s about 400 deaths per year to down to 40. And but they did it very smart. It wasn't just about decriminalizing drugs. It was about having support programs in place to encourage individuals to move away from drug use and to live healthier lifestyles. And I know we have safe injection sites here in Canada, and that's part of the program that happened, part of the program in Portugal as well. But it went way beyond that. It also had a bunch of services that they offered to get them training for jobs. It also destigmatized the whole opioid epidemic or drug use and created it as, rather than being a criminal issue, a medical issue, a health issue. And so it was almost as common, not almost as common, but I mean, the best way to describe it was seen similarly as someone who had a drug problem going to the doctor for help as it would be someone who had a cold or a heart condition. They were seen the same way. The stigmatism was gone. And again, the final step was also to make sure that they had training that they could use or be given to re-enter the workforce. So they had all these steps planned out, and it was quite effective. So that's a model that I think we really need to look into here in Canada. We've started a little bit with, again, the safe injection sites, but one thing that we do as Greens is we look at what success happens. We look at where there's success elsewhere, what works in other countries, and bring it to Canada. And then other parties take our stuff and our ideas and ruin it. And this is why we can't allow more parties to do that. That's why we have to get elected. But this is what I think, this is one of the things that I think we as Greens should be looking into, this program in Portugal. But one of the downsides that I've noticed since this program started is that they are being hit hard. Portugal has had some tough economic times in the last little while. And so they are experiencing cuts. And this is one of the programs that are being cut, especially the last part. And this is a problem that some of the people in Portugal who are in the program, who operate the program, are concerned about, that they're going all this way and then stopping before this last part is engaged. And they feel like they're not fulfilling the whole recovery process. And it's because that they just ran out of money. And this is why having strong economic policies here in Canada is so important, to make sure that, we only have a deficit at times when it's needed, that we strive to have a surplus so we can start paying off our debt, and we're paying less money into interest payments, that we can actually use that money that we would be paying in interest payments to social programs like this.
Okay, thank you.
How are things going so far? I don't want to just be all talk. I want to hear your thoughts as well.
Well, Andrew, so far things are going awesome, and you've been answering the questions right to the point. We appreciate that, not straying too much. So I do believe that we are running out of questions in the chat. So I am going to maybe toss a couple more questions at you, if you don't mind, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
Awesome. And I'll start with Susan, if that's cool, Susan.
Okay, I do have one. What will you do as leader to move our country towards action on reconciliation with First Nations, and specifically the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report?
On the murdering and missing Indigenous girls, actually, some of you may have seen a bunch of these roundtables and debates that me and other Green contestants have been a part of. You may have noticed that I do a less than traditional acknowledgement off of the top. And if you ever wondered about that, it's because my very good friend is Mohawk, First Nations. And, he's a straight shooter. And he says, I asked him once, I said, with these land acknowledgements, what are your thoughts on them? And he's like, truth is, we giggle when white people say them. And I'm like, okay. And I go, okay, so that's why I've done these different acknowledgements. I've talked about action that we as Greens can take. And one of them is actually on murder and missing Indigenous women. There's actually, where I am is close to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and they're actually having a day to bring attention to murdered and missing Indigenous women shortly after this campaign ends. And I said I would help out with that if they wanted me to. And I know that there's probably other events like that across the country. So I encourage you to search them out and be a part of it. But more directly to the question, one thing that Greens might be a bit more guilty of than any other party is promising too much And I know from my personal experience and from reading articles that there's a lot of prominent First Nation individuals, probably first Indigenous peoples who live here in Canada, that say, okay, Green Party, yeah, you write some good stuff, but how's it going to be done? So I'm more about focusing on more on concrete things that we can actually accomplish. No more broken promises. And first and foremost, I want to make sure that there's proper infrastructure. So there's no more boil water advisories on nations, on reserves.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that we have a strong food security plan that's culturally appropriate, where, you know, we don't have to send brown lettuce to remote First Nations any longer. These are the things we want to make sure that we have a proper housing strategy to make sure that we stop the overcrowding of these homes that are unfit to be homes to begin with. Rather than all sorts of talk, I want to actually get action done. And I think that, again, this is something that a lot of Canadians could buy into, because many Canadians do want to help with the reconciliation with First Nations and Indigenous peoples, but it also can create jobs, both jobs off and on reserves. So again, it's about framing how we do things as win-win, being socially progressive and fiscally responsible.
Good.
Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting, Susan. Awesome. I am going to see if maybe Ben, do you have one more question here for Andrew? I see one from
Sorry.
I see one from Tim at the bottom of the list there, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, in your electoral math, is it realistic to envisage Greens obtaining official party status, assuming that the current minority government will not run its full term after the next election?
Absolutely. I think that it's just a matter of making sure that we run a proper campaign and that we believe in ourselves. I think part of the problem is an internal problem. I've met so many Greens that are comfortable, as I said earlier, just being kind of the voice of reason, saying, oh, you know, if we pick up a seat or two, it's okay. And if we share ideas, that's great. It really doesn't matter who implements our ideas. We just want to get our ideas out there. And I say that that's not the best strategy to have. I mean, that's very idealistic and that's great. And it's very welcoming to think that way. But time and time again, other parties only promise things just to get that green vote. And then they either break the promise, as it did with electoral reform, or living up to the Paris Accord targets, or they do it and they do it wrong. I'll give you an example of something here in Ontario. Wind power has a very bad name here in Ontario, and rightfully so. And I'll explain why. When we had this program called the Feed-in Tariff Program, when it first started, the original plan, which is a plan that the Green Party supported and probably even pushed for, was to have local communities have ownership of green energy projects. So not only could these local communities develop their own green energy, but they could also feed it into the grid at a good rate, and they could also benefit from the profits that would be earned on that energy. But after the Liberals got into power, what they did is sell these energy projects to large corporations, many of them outside of Canada, who had been donors of the Liberals in the past. And then that eliminated any local ownership. And not only that, but they put the windmills in wrong areas. They put it where they could buy cheap land. And they often installed the windmills too close to people's homes. The setback rate was about a third of what it should have been. So people were actually getting sick from the sound of the windmills. And they're having problems. Some people are having problems with vertigo because of the windmills. And windmills are great, but it's because of how it was implemented it gave windmills such a bad reputation in this province. So we can't allow that anymore. So we need to get past that attitude of just letting other parties take our ideas as long as we get our ideas out there. No, we got to get elected so we can actually start passing our policies and make sure that they're done right. So that's first and foremost. Second, I have one individual on my team who looked at ridings across Canada and looked at the history of the electoral history of those ridings. And often, and you can actually, if anyone wants to get more about this, he's actually posted something on Facebook. I can repost it for you. He did a lot more work on this than I did, but essentially he found about 40 ridings or so that could be targeted, that with the messaging of being socially progressive and fiscally responsible would probably be enough to attract enough voters to win in these ridings. And that's why I know that this messaging that I'm presenting for the Green Party will work, because it's opening up the Green Party to many more voters in Canada. It's opening up Canada to these red Tories, and who they vote for often win elections. And to me, the climate crisis requires all hands on deck. I want to get as many people to vote for the Green Party as possible, so we can start doing good things for Canadians and the environment.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you for...
I see Tim nodding, so hopefully that answered his question correctly.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you too. Tim, did he answer your question?
Oh, you gave a thumbs up.
Okay, there it is. There it is. Sorry. And if you would like to give a few minute wrap up, Andrew, up to you.
Was there anything else to say? I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be questions for me on my policies or what I would be or how I would be as a leader. Does anyone just feel that they want to share anything, something, how they feel the campaign is going for themselves?
What about something having to do with BC?
Specific for British Columbia?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's one of the questions we had prepared beforehand. What do you think the federal government should be doing about the salmon and herring fisheries in BC?
So I know a bit about that. And I wish I knew probably as much as everyone on this call does. So from my understanding is that there's the big risk out there is that they have these farm fishing nets that can sometimes break, and the factory fish can get into the wild and contaminate the wild salmon. Essentially, that's essentially it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can, yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of organic food and organic farming. And by the way, we never really touched on farming in this campaign at all. And that's kind of disappointing, because not just on this call, I mean, in this campaign, because farming is a huge priority of mine. And I think that those are some of the voters that we can attract, because they're often voters who are fiscally responsible and vote for the Conservative Party because they think that that's the only party that's fiscally responsible, which it's not. But I think we can really attract family farmers by doing more to make sure that family farmers get the money that they needed so they can actually stay in business, because that's a huge problem. I mean, farmers are getting older and there's not enough of a next generation to replace them. And it's something that I take very, very seriously. But with respect to farming, fishing, so I'm a big fan of organic, as I said. So I would definitely prefer the wild fish, wild salmon. But I know that food resources are scarce is not the right word, but we don't want it to be scarce. So we have to make sure that we do have a proper food supply here in Canada. And when I went to law school, I actually took a class on food security, and I was pretty much against I didn't favor this type of factory farming before, but was convinced in that class that, without it, we could hit some strong food shortages otherwise. So ultimately people need to be fed. And so that's why I struggle with it, because it is a challenge. You don't want that. You want food to be as natural as possible. At least that's my preference. But we also have to make sure that we actually do have food security. And that does require factory farming, for example. So I'm not someone that I would say I would be against it. I would say that we need to listen to the experts about how to make sure that we do protect the wild salmon so there is not that contamination. And from my understanding, you can have it on land, but I remember reading up something about it that, and please, if you have anything you want to say on it to enlighten me, I would really appreciate it. But I have heard that the factory fishing that's on land is not as effective, and it's way more costly. Although that shouldn't be the final, that shouldn't be the final factor. I mean, cost shouldn't, as long as it's food, it should be more important. But there's a lot of people that argue against it. I'm not sure why. So it requires listening to a lot more about it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Travis, I see there's another question there from